Welcome to Q&A Selling Online, with answers to questions about creating an online empire, promoting products, or building a brand. Your host, private label and e-commerce entrepreneur, Quinn Amorm.
Welcome back to the show, my friends. Today we have with us a serial entrepreneur with 2 decades of building businesses by creating great products and great marketing. An early pioneer in computerized trading, he built one of the earliest high-frequency trading systems for S&P 500. Then when the pay-per-click marketing platforms burst on the scene, he translated his work into massively successful automated systems for Google, then Facebook, later Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of that. With us today, we have Maceo Jourdan. How's it going, Maceo?
Yeah, it's going great. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to have you too. So before we start, let me tell you something. You have a fantastic voice for podcasting and radio. Anybody ever tell you that?
Yes, they have. And unfortunately now what I'm probably going to do is give you like my deep radio voice and I'll be relaxed.
Yes.
Funny story in the intervening years between hedge fund world and e-commerce, I was doing an hour of video every day. And so I've been doing video online since 2005. I joke around about it. It was so early and it was so bad that Microsoft actually had the best video player platform available. Sort of an insider joke. Microsoft doesn't do much right, but for some reason their Windows Media Player was just stellar. It dates me a little bit, that and the gray beard.
Yeah, that's funny. That I love that you said that because I agree. Microsoft doesn't do much right.
Right.
But, yeah, I remember that back then. So tell me, how did all of this get started? How did you get involved in, what was your first business? Tell me, how did it all get started?
Oh man, I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. And this will tie into more of an overarching philosophy of how do we know things, and is it luck? Is it this or is it that? So at a very early age, I came to the realization that if I found the buyers, then everything else would take care of itself. And if you talk to a venture capitalist today, if they're a successful one, they're going to be mostly concerned with, are the founders selling? Are they getting customers? Do these customers have a high enough lifetime value to support the company? Now, I'm not saying as an 8-year-old, I knew all of that. But at the time we lived in a townhouse community. We were very broke growing up. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us out of the ghetto. So I was always looking for more money because she wasn't exactly forking it over for what I wanted. And some of the ladies in the townhouse community, they liked birds. I saw one of them had a feeder, and we had a school project at the time. And I thought, you know what, if I rolled this little thing in some peanut butter and then, rolled that in some bird seed, I could maybe sell it to these ladies so that, they could sit on their porch and watch the birds. And sure enough, it worked. Because they were little old ladies, they were referring like crazy. So, I had this great little business. It accidentally turned into, what we would call recurring revenue, because of course the peanut butter would wear out and they didn't want to get it down and all that. As a 8-year-old, though, I didn't have high enough aspirations. So pretty soon it got to be work. It got to be a real business. So I was like, I think I'm going to go do something else instead of servicing my growing customer base. But yeah, 8 years old. I had my first employee probably 9 or 10. I was delivering newspapers. And I was small enough that the Sunday papers were a little bit too hard for me to manage. So JR, I don't know if maybe he's going to see this. Thank you, JR. But I'd have to wake him up at 4:00 in the morning on Sundays to get the papers. You'd have to put them together and, put rubber bands on them and then go deliver them. Yeah. So very early age, I've been an entrepreneur.
Wow, man. Oh, man. So tell me, then let's jump over to 2005. Is that when you got this $25,000 loan? Tell me, if that's the story, tell me, how does somebody turn $25,000 negative, because it's a loan, into 25 million or 26 million in your case?
Yeah, the real story is first you have to turn the $25,000 loan into 5,000, because that's what I did. But it's meaningful to say that, right? So you've got to test, but I would say if you want to ditch a lot of the we'll call it false starts and a lot of the losing money, it's focusing on the trend. And what's funny about it is, I'd been a trader. I understood what trends were. I capitalized on them, but for some reason, I didn't fully believe that it was going to work in the business world. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to take this 25,000 and I'm going to try different things. In fact, at one point I was selling a course online on sewing. My mom, she actually recently passed. She was an heirloom seamstress and, knew a lot about sewing. So I thought, okay, I'll sell some products. I'll interview her. And, back, it was sort of in the beginning days of e-commerce and digital products. And then I finally realized, I've been in the financial industry forever. I went to the library and there's something called an SRDS. And the SRDS is still available. It's got mailing lists, and it will tell you how big the list is, what people bought, how many people had bought recently, called the hotline in kind of direct response speak. And I figured out really quickly that there was a little bit over $2 billion being spent every 90 days across all of, I'll call it financial media, right? So there'd be newsletters and whatnot. Yeah. I said, why am I screwing around with, a sewing product? I launched a product where I was both providing education and some trading services myself, some trading direction, we'll call it. Kind of the rest is history as far as how I started. So let's zero in on some of the key points there. First of all, the trend is literally everything in business. I don't care how big of an opportunity you want to go after. If you have the right trend, it can support that size of business. Now, the mistake people make is they look at someone like Jeff Bezos today, Amazon, and they think that they're just going to go out and start a business that's eventually going to turn into $1 trillion company. Well, the reality is Amazon is capitalizing on such a large trend that the potential of Amazon was that big. Of course, nobody knew it was that big back then.
Yeah.
And so some of it unfolds, over time, kind of as we go. So that's number one, is you've got to focus on a trend. And once I turned that part of my brain back on, I looked around the financial markets. I saw that Forex trading was coming out of the institutional world where I lived into the retail marketplace. And so I launched a retail Forex product. And really the trend is what made that company grow so fast. A good modern version of that would be Bitcoin. Everybody wants to talk about, in fact, I know one of the large direct response companies that had probably the biggest Bitcoin promotion, and everybody in the company is, saying how genius the copywriters are and how genius the company is. Look, you are involved in a product that literally had most of the world's financial market focused on it. Yeah. It didn't matter what you were doing. You could have thrown something into the Bitcoin market and you would have made 10, 15 grand a month. I stayed out of it more for moral reasons than anything else, but that's a modern day version of it. Had I got involved in Bitcoin, I could have very easily doubled what I did with that Forex business. Now, that business morphed over time. The big mistake that I made there was, as it was growing, I attempted to change it into something that it wasn't. So I tried to morph it into a technology company. Because we were dealing with a lot of cutting edge stuff at the time, YouTube wasn't even really around. It got to be later on. AWS, so Amazon Web Service, was brand new. There were a ton of competitors that everybody, of course, has forgotten about. We were using Jungle Disk at the time. Dropbox was just a little thing out there in the marketplace. And so I thought I could make a platform that would support e-commerce. So it was going to be video and email and integrating systems, and then applying some of these predictive algorithms. And it was just way too early. So big lesson number two is you've not only got to have a trend, but your customer needs to have a problem. And that's my big mistake. Yeah, people were using video, but it wasn't like in 2009 and 10, they had to have video. Like today, you have to have video. People wanted the integration with email and analytics, but they didn't have to have it. And that was the big thing. In a marketing parlance in technology, they would say the customer has to have a bleeding from the neck problem. And they just didn't have it. So I spent $8 million of my own money, which again, that's like mistake number 3. Go get some investors if you're going to do something like that. And we came to market and nobody wanted to buy it. So we can get into burn rate and other things like that, but it was really the kind of stacking on those mistakes and the timing, and forgetting that the trend and the customer are the two things that are really required to make something big. Is why that business exit actually happened, which I know you didn't ask, but I wanted to kind of give you the full arc of the story, and then we can zero in on any one part.
That's probably what hurts the most, is when you have an idea, you invest your own money, and then you realize that years later, that same idea would have worked and it probably worked for
Oh,
somebody else,
totally.
but you're too early. That's
Yep.
what's even more frustrating is being too early. Oh man.
Unfortunately, that's the story of my life. Partially, well, I shouldn't say life. The reason why I run into it so often is because of my training as a trader. Right, so as a trader, you've got to kind of look forward a bit. You have to try and predict the future. And in trading, I mean, it's not really a big deal if you're a little bit early. So say you bought something at 10, it goes down to 8. As long as that's within your risk tolerance, you don't really care. But in business, it's like if you do that same dance, you're spending $8 million, and then you need $400,000 a month to keep it alive for 4 years for the market to catch up. That doesn't work out so well. So it does if you've got deep pockets. For example, Amazon didn't make money for a long time, specifically because they were building something for the future, and now they're reaping the reward. But it takes that outside investment to make that work, which is why I said earlier, get an investor and make sure that you're talking with them about the long-term vision and realistically looking at the market and seeing if the market's still going to where you think it's going to go. We like to use cliches like Gretzky says, skate to where the puck is going, which sounds great from the stage,
Yeah.
but dude, you can lose a fortune trying to execute on that in the business marketplace. Whereas, the risk in a hockey game is what? You miss the puck, you miss the play. It's like you got 15 more games.
And there's only so much rink where the puck can go. Well,
Absolutely. The
yeah.
rules are constrained. So I like to call myself, sort of a pragmatic, realistic optimist. As long as you know the rules of the game, yes, just about anything is possible. But I don't ascribe to the belief of completely unlimited opportunity and that everything can keep growing to the skies. Just sometimes it doesn't.
Now, what about the time where you have an idea and you know the trend is favorable to you, and now you're going to look for these investors because you trust your instinct and you know it's going to
Yep.
go there. Now, how do you relay that to that investor?
Oh man, that's the simple part. That's where you put on your big boy pants, your big girl pants, and you just tell them. The one thing that I've learned dealing with investors, I actually learned this in the Army. My first promotion board in the Army, they told me, actually they called me Jordan, not Maceo, but they said, as long as you sound confident, it really doesn't matter what the answers are. So when I heard him say that, I was like, well, what the heck am I studying for? So I literally stopped studying. I I maybe knew 20% of the answers, but when I gave him an answer, there was conviction, there was confidence, and I said it like it was the only answer. In fact, I pulled it off so well that one of the first sergeants that was in there, or maybe he was just an E8. Anyway, he actually said, Jordan, you had me so convinced I had to go look it up. And so they passed me. They're like, that's leadership. For someone who literally doesn't know what he's doing, can convey that much confidence. The reality is you're going to figure it out. And so the bottom line is you've got to be confident. And however you get that confidence, whether it's research, whether it's working, interviewing people, or all of it, when you're talking to an investor, they just want to know that you know what you're doing. And that doesn't mean, I'm just going to pick something off of my desk. So I've got this little piece of metal. It doesn't mean that I know exactly how many of these little things are on there and how to make it. It's that I know, given enough time, I can find the people to make that thing.
Yeah.
Because a true investor is going to know that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody knew COVID was going to pop up. I had a $6 million transaction that got scuttled because of COVID. And we were literally 3 days from the closing table. It was in the healthcare industry in the state of Ohio. Ohio shut down, and we're literally looking. I'm on a Zoom call with the sellers saying, well, I guess we'll come back in 3 months. Well, it turned out they actually went out of business in the meantime. So it was probably a good thing that COVID hit, but you don't know. And it's not to say that you have to anticipate a black swan event on, every turn, but your investor is not going to want you to know everything. They want you to be the leader. They want you to be the defining vision. They want you to be the one that's directing where the company goes and really not motivating people, but bringing people along and providing an environment where everyone can excel. And yes, you are going to need some expertise, but if you talk to a VC, a venture capitalist, especially if you get a few drinks into them, you'll find out that, a lot of it is much subtler than that. They're definitely looking for people that have that kind of feeling of capability rather than somebody I'll use another analogy. So in Good Will Hunting, there's a part of the movie where Robin Williams is like, has this crisis, like, oh my gosh, this kid, he's so smart in my life and I'm wasting my life. And I went to MIT and I'm at this community college. And he wakes up the next day and he walks in completely calm. And Robin was such a great actor. You could see he was totally transformed. And the punchline of it was, he said, you know what? I woke up today and realized you read all this in a book somewhere. And so here was, Good Will Hunting talking like he knew everything, but all he knew was out of a book. So I would say the second piece of it is the reason why I was able to pull that off in the military was because I'd had practical experience. And the last piece I'll put in on this is you'll pardon my French, you cannot bullshit an investor. They're going to pick up either on it subtly or consciously that you're just book smart. And that's so prevalent today because information is just clickety clicky. You don't have to go to the library like back when I was young. I mean, we had the Dewey Decimal System, for crying out loud. So just because you've looked something up on Google or you can cite 47 studies does not mean that you can convince an investor to give you money. So the last piece of that would be always add on practical experience to that. And it doesn't have to be some big thing. Investors don't need you to have Google on your resume. If you worked for, Joe's Plumbing down the street and you say, yeah, I was working with Joe's Plumbing, and, say you have a technology company and you say, well, Joe was having a problem getting customers. So, we dug in and we figured it out and we built this automated system and it was really cool, and talked to other plumbers and they liked it. And pretty soon we were selling that. That's what an investor wants to hear. Not, oh, well, I've read these 57 books or something like that, or gone to, 12 conferences and you should invest in me.
So, Maceo, tell me something. Now, jumping over to 2017, 18, talking about like how to not predict the future, but the trends and knowing what's going to happen. 2 years before COVID, you launched like what could be the future of the healthcare system, so you could do it from home.
Yep.
Now, is this like 90% luck, or are you following some sort of trend, or how do you get to this 2 years before it's actually needed like this much?
Yeah, well, so COVID definitely accelerated that. And we would see this all the time in trading and in the markets. You might be in a position, you're making money, and then, like the book, a black swan event happens and the market moves in your direction. And that, let's call it, is luck. You're in the right place at the right time. You can make those events more likely to happen. Really, if I was going to be flip about it, I'd say just pay attention. But let's put some meat around this. First of all, I'll go back to practical experience, right? So you need to understand what matters and what doesn't. So when I'm hiring somebody now, especially after 40, the reason why I only hire people with experience is because they've made mistakes. They know better what's more likely to work, right? And when you're young, you just don't care, man. I mean, that's kind of a defining trait of a young person. So for somebody who's younger, it would be have the self-awareness to realize that you don't know. And you need to get closer to what are the elements that I can put in place that'll have not ensure success like a guarantee, but ensure success like we're taking things off the table that can get in our way. And so that's really simple. You need to have a really big market. Healthcare, it's a big market. Everybody knows it's a big market. Then you need some kind of change, right? So the defining factor in a trend, if you were looking at a stock chart, would be what I coined a radical change. So if you see price plunging down really fast, that's actually a sign of an opportunity to buy. Most retail traders don't think of it that way. So sometimes if you see a marketplace that has a big shock where a lot of companies are going out of business, that could definitely be it. And then of course you have the other side where you have a radical change to the upside. That could be an indication that a lot of people are getting into that market. And so you need to start paying attention to it. Healthcare, obviously, because it's healthcare, doesn't really apply. But there are plenty of healthcare businesses that are going out of business even right now. There are healthcare companies that are filing for bankruptcy and failing. So it goes right back to the customer. Who are you servicing? And so that leads me to, I think I'm on pillar number 3, would be who's your customer? What's their average order value? What's their lifetime value? And so when I bring that model into healthcare, that points to servicing the baby boomers. You're talking about the generation with some of the greatest disposable wealth, whether it's equity in their home or cash in the bank. They have a lot of health problems, and more importantly, the health problems are not getting solved. So it was really back in 1993 or 94, Medicare started to look into fixing some of the problems that they had. Why it took them so long, I don't know. But fast forward, to around 2013, 2014, this thing called value-based care became the buzzword. But it was basically Medicare saying, okay, we've been throwing money at healthcare forever. And so basically the way it would work, if you were on Medicare, you'd go into the hospital, and let's say they said, all right, you've got a bad hip. They would give you a code. That code literally unlocked this big bucket of money. Medicare would dump that on the hospital and then say, okay, fix the hip. Well, they weren't fixing the hip. People were coming back with infections, ER visits, another hip replacement. And so they finally said, okay, giving people all this money isn't working. To me as an entrepreneur, it's like, duh. Like, imagine you're building a house, and before the contractor gets working, you give him all the money. Now, anybody that's built a house instantly is laughing, saying, yeah, you would never do that. Not necessarily because the contractor's a scumbag, but because they're human. They're going to have all that money in their pocket. They're going to go spend it, right? They're going to spend it on stuff that's not your house. That's healthcare. So these hospitals got all this money, and they figured, well, you know what? Let's get another MRI machine, and let's get this and that. So they've built this system that is so cumbersome, not because they needed it, but because Medicare's solution was to dump a bucket of money on them. So enter value-based care. Value-based care is such a radical change in healthcare that most hospital administrators don't really like to talk about it. But it's basically telling the medical system, you're not doing your job, you're not efficient, and we want better outcomes for people. I mean, we have to remember, these are our moms and dads. I mean, my mom just went through this horrendous experience, and even me being on the inside of it had a difficult time stopping it. And so it's definitely broken at a very fundamental level. And so I saw that all of these elements were in place: big market, high lifetime value, high average order value. And those, in almost every instance, are going to give you the opportunity to make a lot of money. Now, the timing wise, it's really pretty simple. In 2030, we're going to have 100% of the baby boomers over 70. Now, we've been talking about the baby boomers for so long that we've forgotten about them, in a collective sense. Obviously, if you have parents that are still alive, you haven't forgotten about them. But from a business standpoint, most people are like, oh yeah, the baby boomers, weren't they a thing back in 2000? Well, yeah, they were, because that's when they started to retire. But over time, it's going to kind of come to a head in 2030. And so I looked at that date. I saw the changes that were coming through mandated by Medicare. I put all of that together to see, all right, we've got this pressure coming from the outside, which is government, which means the system has a bleeding from the neck problem, because the government's going to start taking money out of their pocket, which is about as bleeding from the neck as you can get in business.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to healthcare, when somebody is especially over 70, they're definitely starting to think about legacy. They're definitely thinking about dying, just to put it bluntly. And so their bleeding from the neck problem is, I'm not healthy, and I need to get this fixed. I need to get it fixed now. So all of that put together, yeah, I mean, it looks great that I'm 2 years early, but I like to borrow a phrase from a very well-known trader, Tudor Jones is his name, John Paul Tudor Jones. He said, yeah, you could say I bought the market at the bottom, but it'd be more accurate to say on my 6th try, I bought the market at the bottom. All right. So I've had, plenty of healthcare startups over the years. It just so happened that this last one was, 2 years before everything changed. So yes, I'll look like a genius for now, but the reality is and I'll say this more for the people that are watching this at home, to say that it's luck is one way to describe it, but it's also that if you take care of your finances, you don't spend all your money on fast cars and fast women, like the old saying goes, you can survive 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 attempts to, quote unquote, pick the bottom in the marketplace. So that's truly, to make it practical, it would be that. Never bet everything unless through experience, you've got everything lined up. But with just the few pillars that I've outlined, you can get pretty close to have a good guess. Now, could everything still fall apart? Yeah, absolutely. I have to tell my investors this all the time. It's like one change in the law and the business could be erased. You get multiple hits with COVID and they do something even stupider than they did the last time with healthcare. You could see things change radically. So even then, it's always best to diversify your risk, get investors in. Don't try and create, a multi-billion-dollar business or a category-changing business on your own. I'd rather have 10, 5, 2% of a 50, 60, $70 billion company than 100% of nothing or 100% of, a million, 2 million, 3 million. It's just, it's all about scale.
Got it. I like your analogy of the sixth try because it's very real. People don't know that. Okay, Maceo was very lucky. He did this and he lucked out. But yeah, I failed 5 times before. Yes. This one just happened to be in some ways. I don't know if that is really luck because you made it happen by trying the 6th time, while lucky is the one that, trips on a rock and finds a business that comes out of. I mean, that's luck. Now, trying 5 times and failing and then the 6th working is, I don't know if you still call it luck, but it's persistency or consistency at the same time. So
there's so much that we're trying to put. I'll throw some more stories at you. So early in my trading career, I met somebody. This was in the .com run up, right? So this is, we'll go back in the time machine to 98, 99. And this woman bought something called a leap. Now, a leap is a long-term option. Now, we don't need to go into all the specifics, but you can control a lot of stock for a little bit of money, and you can control that stock for a long period of time. Well, she picked Yahoo. Yahoo was a big company. I was working with her brother. Her brother liked to think he was a trader. And he said, you need to buy some Yahoo. 2 years later, this is right before everything blew up, her options exercise, right? So the contract was for 2 years, meaning she could control Yahoo stock for 2 years. She essentially bought the stock at $20. And when she sold it, it was 200. And she had, it was like thousands and thousands of shares. My friend, that's luck. Okay. Going into a convenience store and saying, down in Arizona, the Powerball, they call it, I think it's a quick pick. The computer picks the numbers. Mm-hmm. Winning the lottery on a quick pick, that's luck. And so I think it's helpful, especially for people that are coming up, to define things clearly. And I think it's this weird desire that we have as people, because if I can chalk Maceo's success up to luck, that means I'm not responsible. And I don't have to look around my life. And, if there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be, you don't have to own that gap. My personal feeling is I'd rather own the gap. I would just like to know as many of the rules in the gap as possible. Going back to the skating rink analogy. Yes, you can skate to where the puck is going, but the puck's going to stop at the wall, right? It's not like it can keep going forever. So there are some rules to this. Again, financial literacy is going to be extremely important. Understanding, all the aspects of a trend. I shouldn't say all. Understanding enough of the aspects of a trend so that you can put the odds in your favor. All of those things are where people will look at you and say, "Man, how did he get so lucky?" I was such a consistent trader on one of my advisory newsletters. My guarantee was, in a rolling 30-day period, if my trades, because I gave buy and sell exits, right? It was the whole trade. It wasn't like, like the trickery that they use now is they'll say, you should buy Amazon. And then when they report the price, they pick the highest price, say, well, you could have sold it at this price. Like, well, yeah, but you didn't say to sell it there. Yeah. Just because sometime during your holding period, it was at that price does not mean you said sell. And so very accountable kind of newsletter. I had 0 refunds, which meant there was no rolling 30-day period where I lost money. And it's because of all of these different rules. So again, when I algorithmatized business, it was based on all of that experience. And you can do that in business. You can set up an algorithm, for lack of a better term, so that you reduce your risk to the point where, you have an idea, it doesn't work, but you're not wrecked. You have an idea that works. Maybe it's a big winner. Maybe it's just a small winner. And then like now, you can be pitching healthcare when the whole world is talking about healthcare.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's where you want to be. And so one of the first things you learn, I should say learned back when markets weren't so electronic, was that what made a trade profitable were other people, right? And so we would literally pick up the phone to execute orders. We would pick up the phone to gauge interest. We'd pick up the phone to trick people, right? So if we wanted people to think we were selling because we really needed to buy and we needed them to exit, we would call up and pretend like we had a really big order. They would panic, they would sell, we would buy, we would laugh because then price would go up. But you learn that it takes other people. And too often as entrepreneurs, we think in this vacuum, like, oh, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to make money. A good story, I'll use his real name because he's probably never going to see this, but a guy in our homeschool community named Mike wanted to start a coffee business in our little town, bedroom community, 34,000 people. Everybody drove from there up to Metro Phoenix to go to work. He wanted to start a drive-in coffee joint. First question I asked him, Mike, how many cups of coffee do you need to sell to pay your rent?
Yeah.
He had no idea. Well, it's like just that basic information is going to keep you from making a mistake. So again, it's the keys to unlocking how do you become more lucky. It's not as easy as just people say, well, persistence and the harder I try, the luckier I am. We have these cliches. Because of the way I'm wired, I always wanted to know, like, what does that mean though? Because when I was coming up, it used to be a saying, you could have 30 years of experience or you could have 1 year of experience 30 times.
Yeah.
So it's not just persistence. It's about, results, right?
True enough. Yeah. Doing the same thing year after year after year for 30 years. It doesn't give you 30 years of experience. It's like
That's right.
30 years doing what you did the year before.
You got 1 year, 30 times.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people like that.
True enough. And you know what? There's one field where I have, I think, 20 something, 22, 23 years of experience. And for almost 10 of those years, I did that too.
Yeah.
Because because there was a certain time where there was not the resources that we have today where you can just look up things and know more things. So I either had to try myself and fail, or if I wasn't so open to failing, I would just do what I did yesterday and the day before, just repeat it because, like, what if I fail? And I mean, that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do, and they sit in that comfort zone because let's do what we did yesterday.
That's right.
And sometimes it's a huge missed opportunity. Other times, I mean, maybe that's what saves them. I don't know.
Well, but sometimes people get, we'll call it lucky again. So I'll give you another example. So there's a guy in the trading world. His name is Dan Zanger. And Dan made a boatload of money in the run up to the dot-com bust. And the story was he was this contractor. I think he was a pool contractor. The legend was he had $30,000 and ran it up to like 20 million. Now this is to Dan's credit. This is by no means saying anything bad about Dan. When the market turned in 2001, he almost lost it all. And that's when Dan realized he had the right trading system for that particular market, right? And so what the illusion that we get handed this from our parents, we get handed this from old guys like me, that it's what we just need to keep doing what we've been doing. Well, the reason why it's worked is because whatever they were doing fit the marketplace at that time. So if you look at the internet today, it's dramatically different from where it was even 5 years ago, and radically different from where it was in 2005, where I started that large e-commerce company. Well, if I don't even think I could still do it, but if I were still running my business the way I did it in 2005, like I said, I don't even think it would be possible. But in non-digital markets, it's so much more common because part of what comes with technology, and this kind of gets into a little bit rabbit trail with psychology, so I'll be very brief. But generally, people that are more interested in technology tend to be higher in what's called trait openness, right? They're open to newer experiences. It's also, more of somebody who votes, in America, we call it liberal, right? So Democrat. where somebody who's more conservative is less open to new experience. Well, if you look at what came out of World War II, it was a lot of conservative thinking, but it was a lot of older businesses that were really just kind of chugging along. You didn't have this earth-shattering technology that required them to change. Enter the internet, mid 90s, but then it really picks up after 2000. And then boom, explodes into the mainstream in 05, 06, 07, 08. Well, now businesses are forced to change, and they're forced to change at a fundamental level. So we can draw some pretty easily corollaries, right? So if you're a business that repairs windshields, very basic business, you need a car, you need a physical product. Someone is always going to have to lay hands on that vehicle. I mean, and literally until we get unbreakable glass on our cars, there's going to be a human being that's going to be involved in it somewhere. Even if there's a robot, somebody's going to have to, push the button. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So in that fundamental way, the business isn't going to change. But if you want to grow as a glass business, oh my goodness, if you haven't radically changed the way you get business, you're dead. So if you've got the guy who's walking around, and it's usually a guy, so we'll be inclusive here, or the gal that's walking around, say a car wash, or someplace where a car is going to be parked stationary long enough so you can look at the windshield and engage.
Walmart
Right.
parking lot.
But so if you're still selling that way, you're going to be dead. Not because it doesn't work, but because some chucklehead like me is going to get on Instagram and going to get on Twitter and going to get on Facebook and inundate the person who, by the way, is sitting in the parking lot doing this. They're not like they used to be, just kind of twiddling their thumbs and looking around, pumping their gas. They're on their device. And if you pair that with the fact that I can now geolocate you and I know you're at a gas station, and I pop that ad and say, hey, is your windshield broken? Maybe you'd like to get it fixed. I mean, of course, I'm being purely theoretical there.
Yeah.
With exception, I mean, I can't geolocate somebody there. But if you're still competing with the dude walking around who I don't know, and if I'm not quite clear if that person's looking at my windshield or, they're looking at me because they want to jump me, which by the way happened to me. I'm talking out of experience again. I had some guy he was looking at me like this. And I'm thinking, okay, what's this guy's problem? So I did like the rational self-defense thing kind of do. I moved to see what he would do. So I moved to another place in the gas. I didn't see him, got out, and he comes walking up like this again. And so I carry a gun. And so I very loudly, said, do not approach me. Well, the guy was trying to fix my windshield.
Oh.
Well, it's like afterwards, I thought the guy just lost the sale forever. Like I'm never, even partially out of embarrassment, like I can't believe I was just about to get into an altercation with the guy, but like we were both at fault, right? So that's a broken sales process. That's evidence of a company that's selling the same way, 1 year of experience, 30 years, but it's pretty easy to see, right? So the way to avoid it, unfortunately, if somebody listening to this is like really super conservative, it's going to be painful. You got to start trying new things. Start out with reading a book that you wouldn't normally read. So it's nice, safe. You don't have to go anywhere and embarrass yourself. Get on Audible. If you can only listen to 5 minutes of it, listen to 5 minutes of it. Watch a TV program you normally wouldn't watch. Watch a TV program you hate and then enjoy talking about how much you hate it and then do it again. And so that very simple process will literally force your brain to start looking for more experience. And so one of the things, we call it getting into a rut, but it's really very simple. Our brains are pattern seeking machines, and they look for patterns that we decide we want. You want a new car, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. You buy a new phone, all of a sudden everybody's got the phone. So if you're looking if you're looking for the same thing in different places, you're going to find the same thing. So just look in the different places, but consciously set out to look for something new. Consciously set out to look at a totally unrelated business and think, okay, how can I use that in what I'm doing? That's a technique I learned very early. I took it up in martial arts, but very early on, I made it a point to consciously take in information and then let my subconscious draw, different connections. And so I'm a synergizer where I can take something completely unrelated and build an entire system out of it, and mentally kind of see if it's going to work, but then go test it. That's like literally the process for innovation. If you wanted to, make innovation into a process.
I try something similar, Maceo, where I look at things that are not what I love. So it's not that I really hate them or whatever, but it's not what I love. But for two reasons. One, like you said, just so you can see both sides, and not because you love Apple, you're gonna see all the Apple stuff out there, right? Or if you bought a Volkswagen Beetle yellow, now you're gonna see them everywhere. But at the same time, for the algorithms, because they know what you like, and they're going
Yes.
to give you what you like over and over and over. So you're going to be limited to that. So sometimes if you go look for the opposite of what you like, it's going to give you a higher variety. And I do that purposely sometimes so I can see different types of ads instead
Oh
of
yeah.
just all the all the entrepreneur selling course ads.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Cause of course, they know how to spend on the ad platform. So it's like
Yeah.
you will not be wanting for whatever, online course is coming next. But actually, this occurred to me for a parent, and this doesn't have much to do with business, but I'm very protective of what my kids watch.
Yeah.
I mean, to a fault. In fact, to tell you how committed I am, before you had services that would do this for you, I would buy a DVD, rip the DVD, get it into Final Cut, and edit it. But I wasn't content to just have bad edits. I mean, I like learned studio quality, like ripple deletes, and learned audio because I wanted to make sure that my kids could see the movies they wanted to see, but I could take out the parts that we as parents felt objections to. So with algorithms, if you really want to watch out for your kids before you give them the phone or the device, and this of course is assuming you can control what kind of account that they have, is curate the account, right? So deliberately watch specific videos because the algorithms can tell how long you've watched the video, but you also have to be mindful for how fast you're scrolling, right? And so when you've got a device and you're like, let's say you're scrolling this fast, the algorithm is going to assume a certain amount of interest. But if you're doing this, if you're flicking,
Yeah.
then they assume, okay, you're not interested at all. So that it's gotten that sophisticated.
Yeah.
So
And the
like things,
pauses.
comment, right? So like things, you can curate your feed. You just have to be very deliberate about it. You got to comment. It takes some activity. Otherwise, yeah, you're at the mercy. You're not just at the mercy of the computer. You're at the mercy of the marketers, which is it's not where you want to be. Trust me, it's just not.
Yeah, yes. I do something like that when it comes to YouTube on TV, because the kids like
Oh
certain
yeah.
series that are not available on kids Netflix, and they watch it on YouTube. So if I go there and I perform a search, they are going to see some of my results in there.
That's right.
So I have to clear those out of there after, so they don't get my
Do you have an old device? Here's my solution for that. Cause I found the same thing. It's not, now, fortunately there was nothing like truly embarrassing. I just got an old computer and logged out of all the accounts. And so, what that will do is it will give you basically the run of station kind of ads. And so that way the searches will stay, very tight to whatever it is you're using that device for. So I've got a 3-year-old daughter. She likes what she says, let's watch the singers. Because again, I know what ads are likely to pop up on certain videos. So like my kids grew up on, this was again way before technology today. They watched Food Network, and so my kids grew up watching Alton Brown because
Mhm.
Food Network was one of the only networks that didn't have ads that were inappropriate for 6, 7, 8-year-old kids,
Yeah.
like Victoria's Secret and whatnot. At least in my opinion. So anyway, I just duplicated that with YouTube. So now like if you go onto that computer, all you're going to see is like The Voice and
Mm.
America's Got Talent and things like that. So I call it my clean computer.
Yeah, and you know what? It's so funny because I have one computer right here in the office where I actually like to play some music, and I play it from directly from YouTube without even looking at the screen.
Oh yeah.
And it's The Voice and America's Got Talent are the ones that are always shown to me the second I turn it on, and I'm not logged in, But the second I turn it on, that's what they recommend for me, right?
Yep.
So all the 4 chair turns and all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
She loves those. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
He got
So,
4. Yeah, she caught on pretty quick.
Marcel, listen, before I let you go, tell me something. If somebody listening right now, they want to get started into business and they're like, okay, I know what I want, what I'm going to do. Now what? What's step number one after they
Oh
decide they
yeah.
want to get into it?
This is That's one of my favorite subjects. So unfortunately, it's the last one. A good friend of mine named Scott Channel wrote a book on cold calling, and he totally stole my one of my catchphrases with "It's just math. Business is just math. Start with the math. Figure out. Let's take a page from direct response marketing. Use 1,000 customers. There's no magic in it. It's just round numbers. Use 1,000. Use 100. Figure out if you had 1,000 customers, and based on a $20 sales price, you'd have $20,000 in. Figure out your ads. Okay, if you place an ad, how much is it going to cost? I like to use $1 per click to start. We could argue until we go blind about what the real cost is. Again, it's just the math.
Yeah.
Start out with guess how many clicks it's going to take, and just run different numbers. I don't think anybody would be so naive to think they're going to, 1,000 clicks equals 1,000 customers. Yeah. My suggestion is always use math that looks scary. So use 1% conversion rates, 2% conversion rates. Please do not start a business where you need to have 30% conversion rate at any step of the game, because that's just a recipe for a disaster.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, again, it's about using the algorithms to narrow down likelihood of failure. And so if you build this business where, say, you've got step number 1 is a Facebook ad, step number 2 is page number 1, and then page number 2 where you're actually doing the conversion. So you've got a little bit of a funnel. Figure that out. If you get 1,000 people here with 1% click, how many do you get here? 1% click, how many do you get here? Then you're going to look over here and say, holy crap, I need, $50,000 to get 1,000 customers. Well, if it's going to cost you 50 grand to get 20,000 in revenue, you're going to go broke on the surface, right? Now that may mean you need to dig in, but again, you're now narrowing down possibility for failure. Now it's an important difference. And this is where I drive everyone nuts. People who've consulted with me over the years, I've got kind of a standard disclaimer. I start with failure points, not with success points. And I learned that on the trading desk. You never start with how much money you can make. You start with how much you're willing to lose. In fact, as a professional trader, if you don't have a risk management system, you don't have a job. So it's always starting with how much you're willing to lose. What's the risk? What can go wrong? Where can this thing fail? Deal with that first. Because again, going back to, I use a lot of trading analogies. If you're going to buy, say, IBM stock, if you make money, it's got nothing to do with you being a genius. It has to do with other people coming in and buying IBM stock and IBM stock going up. It's like, what does that have to do with your bloody trading system? Like zero, right? So in business, it's the same way. If you understand where your risk is, if you understand where you can have some failure points, you reduce it down to a point where you're not going to go broke immediately. There's not going to be, an easy to see catastrophic failure. Then you have a greater likelihood of success. Now, we'll give a warning. That also means you're going to discover really how bad your ideas are. Yes. So that's the hard part, is the next phase. And please don't underestimate that. We love our ideas, man. I mean, it's like we want to put them up on a wall. We like talking about them. And, because look, you get a dopamine release, right? It feels good to talk about what you think is a good idea. So don't underestimate your brain fighting for the life of that idea. You've really got to get into that logical spreadsheet frame of mind. And this is actually some of why consultancy is somewhat of a good idea. If you just can't separate from your idea, get somebody else. Get somebody who can run a spreadsheet. Have them, run through a few questions. You can, Google, how do I build a profitable funnel, for crying out loud. In fact, I probably have some on my YouTube channel by now. But do the math. That's where you have to start, because by the time you actually get to, like poor old Mike launching, your drive-through coffee joint, relatively speaking, whether or not you're going to be successful. And here's kind of the punchline. You're going to know where you're off track. So often entrepreneurs bury themselves. It's not that the business buried them. It's that they fell in love with their idea and they kept at it. I have seen
Yes.
there's a I'll use one from your neck of the woods. Amaranth trading in Canada. One trader, $3 billion. One dude in a week. I've seen people with billions and billions of dollars just give it all away because they had an idea and they stuck with it. So the key to success is paradoxically found in finding failure first.
Got it. And I love your idea of doing the math. And
It's
that's one of
just
my
math.
favorite points. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that do, I don't know if that's the correct term, but biased math.
Oh,
Well, they
yes.
look at, you know what? There's 7 billion people. If I'm going to get 1%,
Right, right.
and I'm like, what do you mean you're going to get 1%? That's a guess. You're not going to get 1%. And if that
Yeah.
1% of 7 billion people, they're going to convert to my, I'm like, okay, that's wishful thinking, of course,
How many
but
people
it's,
want your stuff? It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, oh my goodness, Maceo, there's so much we could talk about. We could, and I, maybe we got to do this again another day.
Yeah, I'd
Uh,
love to.
for now, for the people that want to know more and if they want to connect with you and connect and hear more about Canexxia, that is that healthcare system that we talked about earlier,
Yep.
where do they go? Where do they find you?
Yeah, so Canexxia.com, that's Canexxia. That's kind of my old SEO blood coming out. I wanted a name that was somewhat memorable, but also unique. And then if they want to connect with me personally, of course, MaceoJordan.com. I'm one of a few Maceo Jordans in the world. So if you throw that into Google, you're going to find me. I will warn you, you're also going to find one mugshot, which we can discuss on a private call. But you can get on my YouTube. I've got a series there called Behind the Paywall where, all the stuff that guys I know sell for $10, $12, $15,000. I just give it away. Because look, it's not, everybody wants you to believe that the secret is in some course. It's really not. All of that, that's the commodity. The commodity is the information. The real juice, the stuff that's worth something, is knowing how much of that stuff is actually worthwhile and how much of it's worthwhile for your specific situation. That's why I just give it away.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Maceo. Like I said, we'll have to do this again. For
It'll be
everybody
my
listening,
pleasure.
I'll have Maceo's links on the show notes so you guys can check him out. And again, big pleasure.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Quinn. Appreciate it.
Thank you.